Hey. Oh god, I gotta stretch. Hello, peoples. Hello. Hello, I'm tired and I'm bored and I don't want to do anything else. So, hi, I'm streaming. I'm streaming by myself. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, peoples. Hello. I was like, I got stuff I need to do, but I'm just gonna do it later, I guess, because for some reason I get more motivation, like, later in the day, so. Will you be drawing anything? I will not. This ain't a drawing stream. This is just me sitting around talking because I can. I will be doing an art stream hopefully sometime, like either this week or next week. And it's probably gonna be like I'm gonna try and do one where it's like a live tutorial stream thing, because I realized part of the reason why I struggle to actually sit down and do any kind of tutorial video or whatever is because it feels like there's so much that could be said that I could not fit in the video that is reasonably lengthed. And also, like, there'd be so much having to speed up and whatever that I honestly feel like it would be more beneficial if people could, like, ask specific questions or ask whatever. Because I feel like I think that'd just be a neat little thing to have a quote unquote tutorial that's, live back and forth, So, yeah, that'll hopefully happen sometime soon. I believe the poll that won my poll was posing, so I guess it'll be a posing stream. So, yeah. Can you ask questions? You can ask questions. That's totally cool. That's all what these chill streams are about. And it'll probably not become chill stream whatever, because that always happens. Mothman versus Bigfoot. Who'd win, or would they fall in love? I have no idea. Cryptids are cool to me, but I'm not as in depth as like some of my friends are. So. Can you explain your longest RP and what it was about? Well, I mean, honestly, longest? Well, okay. Longest roleplay might have been one I had in the past with a different friend of mine. An old friend of mine. We haven't talked in a long time. They haven't really been all that active online anymore. But I had a roleplay. It was a Warrior Cats roleplay, but it was really fun. And I missed that roleplay dearly. But it was very good, and I think it taught me a lot about what I enjoy in a storyline. So that was probably the longest, because I think that probably happened over the span of a year or two. So, but I mean, the one I'm doing with Mitchie is definitely catching up. So, favorite color? I like colors. See, because I like colors depending on where they are, because any color can look nice if you frame it in the right way. So. Please give you drawing ideas. Draw the first thing, like close your eyes, open them, and draw the first thing you see. There you go. Out of all your character designs, which one is your favorite? Ugh, jeez. I have a lot. You'd have to be, okay, I have so many flipping characters. Like, I could pick out, like, my favorite within a group, but it's hard for me to pick the favorite overall. So, by the way, if it feels like I skipped your question, it's just because sometimes the chat goes too fast for me to keep up with the questions. So you're free to ask it again. Just don't like spam it every 5 minutes. So yeah, if you really want to get answered. Could you do a video about the Crackland, and its lore and characters? Well, Mitchie and I did a part 1 of that, and we're going to do a part 2 at some point. I don't know. But we did part 1. It's just like the first 30 minutes or have nothing to do with it. But that's a live stream somewhere. I don't know if we could do it in a video because I just feel like that'd be an hour-long video, and I don't want to edit that. So, and I don't think she wants to. So, you know, it would have to be in a live stream. Does Zero need therapy? Probably, but I think he's too far gone at this point. What's your opinion on advice that's around the lines of if you're stuck, kill a character? I mean, that depends. That could be good advice depending on the context, but it would have to depend on the story. I mean, obviously, if there's no point in killing the character, then whatever. But I mean, if you're in a story where there's literally no drama, have someone die suddenly and write the story about how the characters react. So, you know, I don't know. It depends on the context. Have you seen Shin's Hybrid Heroes? I feel like I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it. Do you like memes? I mean, everyone likes some kind of meme. Everyone has a meme of some kind. It's just not, probably, it might not be a famous internet one. Technically, like, an inside joke is, like, by all means a meme. Like, if there's a certain word that, like, makes you laugh between you and your friends, that's technically a meme, you know? Like, memes are a lot of things. Memes are propaganda. What's your favorite creepypasta? Okay, I can't remember the name of it, but it's this one about, it's framed by a guy, and at first it sounds like it's actually kind of sweet, and he's talking about, like, this girl he likes or whatever, but it turns out he's actually a stalker, and you're basically reading the letters of a stalker, and it just progressively gets creepier and creepier and darker, and then the ending is so, like, fucked up. So, I don't remember the name of it, but I like that one a lot. I also like Russian Sleep Experiment because I'm a basic bitch. But yeah. How do you create conflicts? Well, it does depend on the story. There are a lot of stories where conflicts will kind of write themselves, especially once you get it started. There's a lot of stories where it's like once you get the ball rolling, conflicts will kind of create themselves. In stories where everything's a little bit more mellow, sometimes the best way to do a conflict is to randomly throw it in. Okay, like this is a stupid example, but I find it hilarious because I find myself, I keep doing this because I don't know why, it's just amusing. I love this kind of thing. Like I've always like joked that like if like you're stuck on something to do, just throw in a kid. Makes everything better. Like random kid and see how everyone reacts to that. Like random kid without parents, whatever. I don't know what about having like a bunch of characters suddenly having to like look after a kid like makes for such an interesting story, but for some reason it does to me. Because it can really, for one thing, it can like invoke different sides of characters. It can there's something about like childlike innocence as opposed to jaded characters. It's really fascinating. It's also the idea of like, because I'm just someone who loves relationships of all kinds, whether it be romantic or like familial or platonic, whatever. It's just that kind of stuff. I like stories based around relationships more than about a single character being a single character. But yeah, so I don't know. But sometimes if you have a story where you feel like something's running dry, think of something that you can just throw in there that will throw everything out of whack, because that's what's interesting, you know? Skipping to the bottom, I apologize if I miss anyone. Have you ever scrapped a character and then reused the idea that you had for them? I think I probably have. I don't know if I can. Let me think. Because I swear I probably. Yeah, I think I have. Because, okay, well, there is an actual idea that I technically did. I mean, I wouldn't call this entirely scrapped, because this is an idea I could totally go back and work on, but technically Seven Sins and a Baby, that premise is really, really, really similar to a different story I had before. It was just, rather than, like, the Seven Sins, it was, like, the Grim Reaper, Cupid, and, like, Sandman having to raise a new Mother Nature or something like that, but it was, so I've probably done that before. I just not recently. But yeah, I just can't think of any specific examples. Do you like The Walking Dead? No, I've never watched it. So, what are your pet peeves for stories? Ugh. I mean, there'd be a lot. It just would kind of depend on the story. I mean, for one thing, most young adult books get on my nerves because they're like the same thing every time. I really, really, really hate the like, I'm not like other girls trope because it's so boring and it's always so painful to read half the time. Especially because you shouldn't need to say that you're not like other girls. If you have to say it, then it's probably not that obvious, but um, yeah, that could be a whole video in itself, but I'd have to sit back and think. Will you ever do another Jackbox stream? Oh, most definitely. Just probably sometime this week or something like that. I just want to see if I can get friends in on it and whatever, but yeah, definitely. What's your favorite SCP? Oh God. See, I've wanted to read more about the SCPs. I keep not doing it, but I want to read more for the SCPs. I really like the like Crying Man. I like him a lot just because there's something like so terrifying about the idea that like once you look at him, you're done, but it's not an instant death either. You just have to wait for it. And it's just there's something very horrific about like sealing your fate like that. There's these two called like Cain and Abel that I like a lot because I find the anonymity around their dynamic to be interesting. Yeah, I need to read more on SCP stuff. Okay, I'm skipping to the bottom. I'm sorry if I missed your questions. You're free to ask them again, like if I missed anything. You're free to ask questions again if I missed them. Question is thing. Have attempted 5 comics and not finished 1 page. I think it's easier to explain things as like a novelish thing. Takes less time, but should I go with a comic anyways though? The thing with that is I've always said this. To me, when it comes to stories, I've found that some stories are better told in certain ways as opposed to others, which sounds a little weird, but like for example, there are lots of movies I see where I'm like, wow, this movie was good, but it would have been, or this movie sucked, but I think that was because it would have made a better TV show or a better book. Or there's like things I read where I'm like, geez, I cannot get into this as a story, but it would make a fantastic comic or a fantastic movie. With some of my own stories, like Luniverse, I could never make that like animated as much as I'd want to because the character designs, it just wouldn't work and it would just be too much. But it would make a great comic. Or the idea of making it a video game has grown on me so much. I just do not have the skills for that right now. But I might eventually. So if I get those skills, that'd be fantastic. Thankfully, I'm not in a rush to finish Luniverse. But so I would say if you have a story that feels like it would be better written as a novel, write it as a novel. If you feel like it would make a better comic, then work on it to make it a comic. But yeah, so that's the advice I could give, I guess. Could you go a bit more in depth with your story? Colorful. I can. I just would need to figure out where to start. I really do need to go back and I want to like make new references for those characters and stuff. Because I still work on my story Colorful, kinda. It's just really in the back of my mind right now. But yeah, I need to work on that more. That's one that I do hope I could someday animate, but I might need to wait till I have animation friends. But or I'm, better generally with animation and stuff and probably get better programs and things. But yeah. So I could talk more about that. I just would need to figure out, like, where to start. I don't know. Any favorite comedians? I mean, if I have a favorite, I would not remember their name because I'm so terrible with names. It's ridiculous, honestly. I'm just really, really bad with names. Uh, you have any? Have you got any tips on animating? I mean, I couldn't. Any general tips? No, not really, unless you want me to just go over basics of animation, which I just feel like would be a little bit boring for me to say and not have any visuals. Um, I don't have any general tips for people. Um, so I could give like specific criticisms, but I couldn't really just give tips that could work for anyone. So um, if you could have to wait, if you could have any of your universe characters interact with you IRL, which would it be? Oh God, I mean, there's so many of them. I mean, I feel like Jackson would be fun around, but I might get tired of him very fast. um, Felicity would be nice. She's sweet, but also I feel like it'd be hard to have a full conversation with her because, yeah. But for me to have a full conversation with her, I like to interact with Virus. Virus is nice. Is probably would be fun to talk to in real life because, yeah. Um, do you have any app slash game suggestions, or do you want any? Well, right now I'm really obsessed with this game called shit. I just forgot the name. um, there's a new little like battle like game whatever that's super cute. Like I don't think it's Battle Stars maybe. I don't know. But it's an app that's pretty neat. Battle Stars or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah. Um, okay, I'm skipping to the bottom again, so if I miss your question, I'm sorry. Do you have any tips for making romance between characters? Well, I will say if you're talking about romance between characters in a story that is not specifically a romance story, my best advice would never, ever, ever force a romance onto characters. Um, it's like if you the worst kinds of relationships are the ones that feel like they're being written because the author thinks they have to write a romance or that they're just doing it to try and please the audience. You should write a romance if you feel like that romance naturally works. Now, obviously, if you're writing a story where the specific genre is romance, then, like obviously you might need to that would be a bit more of you having to focus and make sure that the characters are compatible and you write them compatible. But it's there's a bit of a different, if you're writing a story that's not supposed to center around the romance, never force it. Like for example, if you have a main male and main female character, or even if you have main two females or main two males, never ever ever feel like they have to get together because they do not. And that's the kind of logic that's going to make for a really poorly written relationship that everyone's going to get mad about. So do it if it feels natural and just write them like normal people. Write them how like you think their relationship would go. It's just make it work. Don't force anything. That's probably the best advice I could give. Are you ever going to post the Luniverse story like as notes or something? Like as like my notes on it? Because there's information of it all over my DeviantArt if you want to go find that. And eventually I'll bring back those videos where I talk about the characters again, only they'll be better formatted and with their updated references and whatever. But I mean, I post information about it as an actual story. I aim to make it a real story, just not anytime soon. So yeah. It's gonna be 2040 when we get Luniverse. I mean, you never know. Great stories don't get born overnight, so I mean, I'd be 40 years old. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, again, if you feel like you missed my question, then you can ask again. Favorite trope and least favorite trope. Ah, shit. See, here's the thing. For some reason, I always forget. Like, my mind blanks on on specific tropes until I'm reminded of them. I'd say least favorite. Again, least favorite would probably be the kind of stuff where it's like, I'm not like the other girls or whatever. Um, and as for my favorite though, I'm blanking on like different kinds of tropes because I feel like I'm missing a ton of them. I mean, shit, I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head, so I'll come back to that, I guess, if I think of any. What's your opinion on Holly Brown? I mean, I talked to her, so like if that says anything, like I'm in a Discord chat with her, but I don't know. I don't really want to get into all of that stuff because I don't really. It's not really a conversation topic I won't have in a chill stream. So, any updates on your Student Universe OCs? No, I haven't really been working on them at all. So, I've moved on to other things at this point. I think that's safe to say. What's your tips for posting art online on a regular basis? Well, I'll say this. If you want to post art on a regular basis, you are going to have to get over trying to make everything you do look good and be ready to post even the stuff that's a little bit more embarrassing, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I wish like it's one thing, like I hate when I don't like it when artists feel a need to constantly get rid of their old stuff because I feel like that it can make people feel like they only see the good high quality stuff and they never get to see the lesser quality stuff. So, it's not a bad thing to post like your random doodles that didn't work out or your broken anatomy, whatever, because it's just how art is. You break a bunch of eggs before you get something good. But at the same time, so if you want to post art regularly, then you just have to be ready to post pretty much anything rather than just finished work. But also, if you want to focus on quality over quantity, then you should focus on posting like finishing work and taking time with work rather than posting consistently. So, I'm not like other girls. I'm the only one who likes memes and food raw. Like, yeah. It's a kind of an annoying trope, especially how it's played off because the girls, like, they're usually like, I'm not like other girls, and yet they have, like, very little personality or their personality is very flaky, and then they start acting like even worse than other girls are portrayed in the story. It's just, I don't know. It's a little bit annoying. Favorite type of dere? I mean, it's been long since my anime days, so I don't really think I have a favorite anymore because I more prefer how things are written as opposed to what type they are. So, because a tsundere can be written good or bad, What OC would you throw into the sun if you ever met them? Well, I'd throw Solar in the sun, but he is the sun, so that might not work out very well. Do you have any tips for making character references? Okay, I do have a few. For one thing, and these are general tips that could apply hopefully to anyone. For one thing, okay, when you're doing a character reference, my recommendation is not to shade it unless you expect to put a shaded and not shaded version on it. Make your references flat colored because if you're gonna get art from people, it makes things so much easier. I can't tell you how frustrating it is when I get a reference that's like super heavily shaded and not even like cell shading's one thing, like some really basic cell shading, like that's one thing because at least you can tell where the shading starts and the colors start. But when things are like super heavily shaded in a reference, it's super frustrating because I'm like, what colors am I supposed to use? What's a shadow and what's a color? I don't know. But so my recommendation would be make things flat colored or at least have a flat colored version on your reference so people know what colors to use. My other recommendation is, although in other art pieces, it's all about making things not look stiff and not look, and look dynamic. Don't do that don't focus too much on that when you're doing a reference. Don't you want people to know how the proportions of your character are. You want to know like how big something is compared to something else. And if you have one hand flying off into the distance and the other one coming at the camera, then that's distracting and it makes it hard to tell like, okay, like is like what's supposed to be what, you know, it can be confusing. And dynamic poses are good, and you should have a bit of a pose that has a bit of personality to it when you're doing a reference so people can kind of look at your character and know. But at the same time, don't make a pose that obscures too much of the character. Like, don't have one where the hand is coming at the camera and you can't tell what's on their hand. Sorry, I thought my mother was speaking to me. But, you know, like something, or don't have something where it's covering up most of the body or whatever, because then no one knows what's supposed to be there, you know? So, like, although you should have a little bit of personality, don't cover up too much of the character. For references, it's the one time where I say a stagnant, just standing there idly pose really ain't bad. It's actually more beneficial to you than anything else. Okay, I'm a fan for 6 months. I love your seas. You're inspiring me more diverse seas. Oh, well, thank you, Minty Wizard. I appreciate that. Sorry, I'm reading all of this as much as I can. So I'm sorry if I haven't thanked you for a compliment or something like that. I'm sorry. I want to say how much I love your Sin characters. It came to a point where I became an inspiration for my original story I'm developing. Well, thank you. Misty Dimensions. Elizabeth Alger, is it good to sometimes put cliches in stories? Cliches are not inherently bad, and anyone who tries to tell you that cliches are inherently bad and should be avoided at all costs is incorrect. Cliches are only bad if you put a cliche in there because you think it'll like be popular, or you think it's a popular cliche. That's when they're bad. A cliche is not inherently bad. Like, you know, for example, parents being dead. Well, they can only be dead or alive. So, you know, if parents being dead is good for the story and it works for the story, do it. Doesn't matter if it's a fucking cliche. Or, you know, cliches aren't like, they aren't bad. They really aren't. But at the same time, you shouldn't go after doing cliches. I mean, well, also, here's the thing too. Some people, like me, I intentionally start characters off on the basis of a cliche just so I can expand upon the cliche and like do something even greater. I mean, perfect example is Envy and Gluttony. I designed them to be the two main stereotypes for female characters in a lot of different stories, where it's like the really upbeat but kind of ditzy, like bimbo-y one, you know, whatever, and then the really like serious, grumpy, like smart, intelligent one who's kind of bitchy, whatever. I think you could call it like the bimbo and the bitch is technically what you could call it. But the reason why I did that is because now I have a place to expand on their characters and make them more than just that trope. But then again, because all of my sins are supposed to start off as tropes, but then be definitely not their trope. So, you know, yeah, okay. So yeah, cliches are not bad. They are not. But anyway, so that's another video I need to make. But yeah, so okay, skipping down to the bottom again. I'm sorry if I missed your question. Oh dear. When did you come up with your story? Which story? I have many of them, so you have to be a bit more specific. We can't be together because we're siblings. 1 hour later, turns out we're not sibling. Lola, yeah, that's pretty bad if it's written poorly. Especially if it's written poorly. That's not good. Obviously, if it's, I will say this, there's a big difference between something being a story point and being something that just is what these characters are doing and it being romanticized. There's a very big difference from that. So, but yes, that definitely when it's framed like that, that's just weird and that's unnatural and it's just strange. If your main character's family is alive, it is also a bit of a cliche at this point. It's like 50-50. Yeah, exactly. Reverse the cliche. The kid's parent is dead, but is also a ghost. That'd be kind of cute. Or it's the kid's parents are taking care of them from the grave. That'd be cute. Do you like the idea of cat based on fruits like peaches? I mean, sure. Why not? Have you ever been drawing a character, but then you you drew them in a weird way and thought, hey, this looks cool. I guess I'm not sure. I think maybe Immortal Instruments. If you're asking if I've seen it, Gunmoon, I haven't seen it. If you're asking if I like it, I have no opinion because I haven't seen it. I don't know. I hate it when people say OCs suck. My main is overpowered, which is pretty weak in our world. Power is the main theme of it. Well, that's another video I want to make. There's so many videos I need to actually get on. God, it's so overpowered characters are something interesting to me because so many people act like a character that is powerful than the average human is somehow inherently bad when that's not it. When it comes to overpowered characters, it is about comparing them to the world they are in, the realism of them being that powerful, and then how it is written in a story. An overpowered godlike character can still be super interesting to read, and I don't think some people understand that. Some people get so caught up in that stories for some reason have rules that they forget that no, they don't. It's not about how well a story works. It's about how much entertainment value you can get out of it. I mean, I haven't seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, but my brother talks about it like all the flipping time. And that story is all over the place. It is like super inconsistent. Things change out of nowhere. Things come up out of nowhere, whatever. But from what I can tell, people like it just because it's so weird and fun. And that's what's important about a story. You can have the most nonsensical, weird, bizarre, inconsistent story ever, but if it lets people have fun, then you've achieved your goal. That's the goal, you know? So, yeah, stories are so much more complicated than people do, and people get so caught up in rules that don't exist. So, you know, when did you come up with your 7 Sin stories? Oh, God. Some point last year or the year before that. Hang on, let me go look. I came up with it very shortly before I actually started uploading pages. Hang on, let me look. Yeah, so like back in February, March is when I kind of came up with it, like last year or the year before that or something like that. So, yeah. If someone were to draw fan art for you, what would you want them to draw? Anything they want to draw. I'd rather someone have fun making fan art for me than just to get fan art. So, hey. Do you have any advice about making clothes for characters? Just probably, to me, I think something that people forget is that the first thing you should think of about, like, what would they have to wear? Like, what would only be believable for the setting? Like, if they're in a fantasy world, they can't wear a hoodie, you know, stuff like that. If social status is a factor in their character, that's important. Like, you know, like a slave isn't going to wear fancy dresses and whatever, unless that's the world you're building. And then the second thing you should think of is what would the character wear? That actually helps me a lot when people get stuck on clothes, is what would the character wear? Would they wear something that looks totally not fashionable, or would they be really good with fashion? I don't know. But yeah, I can't really give a whole lot of general advice on that, but yeah. I have an idea for a story, but I can't figure out an ending. How to get there? Any advice? Well, play around with ideas. Even if something seems stupid, play around with it and think about it. If all else fails, just start working on your story linearly. Like, just start going with the story and seeing where it goes. Like, when I started doing 7 Sins and a Baby, I didn't have an ending for that. Then again, it's not supposed to be a story people take too seriously. It's just my realm for having fun that I don't plan to make money on unless I decide to do merch or something. I don't know. But yeah, like, when I started that, I didn't have an ending. It was actually through role-playing with Mitchie that I figured out where my story was going to end. So it does have an ending now, and it does have a plot now. So that's nice. But, so yeah, just, you gotta sometimes play around. You gotta explore your own world to find where the story is going to go. It sounds weird, but it's true. I have the male character does an emotion trope, but I like to think I've done it well. He does that because he knows he handles loss terribly, so he tries not to care and is super overprotective. So yeah, I like that kind of stuff. I like whenever people come off like a one note thing on the surface, but then they have something deeper. It's just one of my favorite things. I hate people who have eye hurting colors, like not even natural or saturated color. Well, it depends. I mean, I wouldn't. I hope you mean I hate just as a general like I hate sushi kind of thing. I don't hate sushi. I've never had it, but because I mean, it is what it is. Some people are actually colorblind, so And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that like they're actually colorblind, so sometimes it's hard for them to do actual colors. But anyway, I don't know. A story does have rules its own. That's a good quote right there. Good work, Illuminati. Illuminati. Oh, that's clever. Yeah, that's a good quote though. A story does have its rules its own. That's a good quote. Good rules. A good statement to live by. What do you find the most difficult to draw? I think nowadays I find like there's just some specific poses that are difficult. Like honestly, like stiffer poses are a little bit difficult. Sometimes getting two people together or in the same frame is a little bit challenging. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah. So I don't know. It's depends. Sometimes it's just certain drawings of certain things that I struggle with. So. How do you get people to buy your commissions? I've had mine up for a while and I haven't gotten any. Just the reality of commissions is the fact, like, because here's the thing. I used to have commissions open like way before I got the traction that I do now. And back then I would only get like the occasional one. Like I had one person who came back to me about like 2 other times because I had cheap prices back then. But my advice with commissions is honestly you're going to have to be patient. Art is not something that you can just suddenly like boom, you're making money off of. Sometimes it does have to do with your traction. But the best way is just to leave them out there and don't be afraid to mention that you have them open every now and then. Just don't do it like every single day, and just kind of wait and just keep posting. That's another thing. If you sit there and you don't post anything, then no one's ever going to find you. And so you're going to have to actually try to get your art out there before anyone's going to do it. In fact, even better, if you really want to get commissions, post artwork and link to your commissions in the description and stuff like that. And eventually you'll get people. And it will be kind of a bit of a slow burn, but like usually you'll have... you like post your like someone will commission you, and then if they like it or they like your service, they'll come back, and then if they might show it to other people, and that's how it just starts. It goes up from there, but it does take time, unfortunately. The only reason my commission seems so snappy recently is just because I've gained enough of a following to where I can get that. But then again, a lot of people who come back for commissions are people who've already commissioned me before, so take that as you will. If you're playing a video, any genre, what is one type of boss fight you would love to see? I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, really. Okay, I'm going to skip to the bottom, so I'm sorry if I missed anybody. How do you get your art noticed more, and what do you do if your following isn't active? Okay, I'm going to speak specifically from Deviantart, because Deviantart's the one I know. For one thing, you should not do art because you want to be famous, because if you're doing art to be famous, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. But I can understand why you'd want to get some notoriety and stuff like that. So my tips for Deviantart: groups. You would be shocked how many followers you can get from just doing groups. Like, believe me, you can do it. Just find some general art groups where you can post whatever and post your art in there, and you'll find followers over time. Whatever, and just keep drawing and improving, and you'll get there. So find groups, and then someday, eventually, you won't even need them anymore to get a following. But so just posting to groups can be a good way. If you want an active following, do not. Do not do anything that's like, follow me, I'll follow you back, because that is not going to be an active watcher. It is not. Someone who's just doing follows for follow backs is not going to be active at all. That's just the reality. And here's the thing. You you will always have a disproportionate amount of activity on your accounts compared to the amount of followers you have. You always will. That is just the reality of social media. Not everyone is going to comment on every single thing you post. Not everyone is going to have something to say. On Deviantart, for example, I have 12,000 watchers, which has taken me a long time to get to that point. But it's not like every picture I post has 12,000 comments on it. I've posted a bunch of commission work recently and all that sort of stuff. And I'll get I've gotten more comments on this recent batch of commissions I've been posting up than I have on most of my normal commissions. Usually I don't get hardly anything on commission pictures because whatever. And then sometimes I get more on certain pictures and more and less on others. I don't know why. That's just how it is. But if you're looking for engagement, then you're just going to have to do things where people would engage with you. Sometimes just posting up art isn't always going to do something. If you really want engagement, then you're just going to have to do things where people can engage on or something like that. But you can't always get that. And again, the amount of people interacting with you on every picture is going to be extremely disproportionate to how many followers you have. That is just the reality on any social media ever. There is a reason why I have 66,000 subscribers, whatever, on YouTube, but almost all my videos are in the thousands for a while, in the 4 digits, as opposed to anything higher. Hell, my live streams rarely get out of 100 sometimes, So, it's engagement's a weird thing. That's all I can really say. Anyway, how do you come up with plot lines? I have characters and universes but no stories. Well, that would be up to you and just playing around with those characters and thinking about what would happen. Honestly, the best way is just ask, what if blank happened? What if these characters had to deal with blank? What would if whatever had to do with whatever? That's how fucking me and Mitchie's story keeps going. Our roleplay keeps going, is because we keep asking ourselves, well, what if this happened? What if this happened? Whatever. Because that's just how it keeps going. If sometimes a story can just write itself too, once you get it going. Do you find that some of your characters have some features that look like you? I'm sure some of them probably do, because there's only so many different. Automatically they would if they have brown hair, brown eyes. Whatever. But or if they're white, then already that's a trait of me. So they probably do, but I don't really have any characters that inherently look like me, I don't think. Have you ever been asked for traditional art commissions? I have not, but then again, I don't post traditional art really, unless it's on Instagram as just a little doodle, because I don't really do traditional art. So I've never gotten asked for traditional art commissions. Which, good, because I don't really have the supplies to do any traditional art. And my digital art is significantly better than my traditional art, to be honest. So, I'm not the best at spelling. I know practice makes perfect, but I rather make a comic. Does that make me lazy? No. Are you saying you rather make a comic than a story or a novel? Because it's not lazy. In fact, it's more work to make a comic because you have to actually draw everything as opposed to just type it down. So I don't know. I don't think I entirely understand the question, but yeah. In my opinion, it's best for people to see you commenting on other people's artwork so that you can know you're an engaging person. That's actually good advice as well. There are so many. Thank you, Armini. This is actually something that really takes me off when there are people who complain and complain and complain that no one is commenting on my stuff, no one is engaging with me, but they don't comment on jack shit. And it's listen, if you're going to complain that no one else interacts with you, I better see you out there interacting with every single person you follow, because that's ridiculous to expect everyone else to interact with you when you don't interact with anybody else. I don't expect everyone to comment on my pictures because I don't comment on every single person I follow's pictures. Usually I just look at it and move on. So do not expect people to engage with you if you're not even willing to engage with the people you follow. That is something I want to say, Don't expect things from people that you don't even really do yourself, because otherwise at the very least, I'm going to look and say, God, you're one of those people. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, that's my advice too. Just if you really want engagement, sometimes you're going to have to engage with people first. Slight tangent, actually, because this is just something that ticks me off a little bit, and I've always wanted to talk about. It really bugs me when people make big deals over, like, why aren't they talking to me? Why don't these people interact with me anymore? But they don't interact, like, they don't make any attempt to do it. Like, they don't start any kind of conversation. They just are sitting there wondering why the person's not talking back to them. Like, listen, if you want someone to interact with you, you should be willing to interact with them first. Like, that's just the reality of things. You should not expect things from people that you're not willing to do yourself. It's just something that ticks me off a little bit because, whatever. And like another thing too, if you really want to talk with someone, then you're going to have to find the thing to talk about, I mean, obviously you should figure out at what point when someone just clearly doesn't want to talk to you or whatever. But like, honestly, do not complain about people not interacting with you if you're not even going to interact with them. And I'm going to be honest here. You can't use an excuse like, I'm an introvert or something, for example, for not interacting with people and being like, well, they should interact with me because I'm the introvert. That's not how this works. It's not. If your introversion is what's standing in your way from talking to people, then work on your introversion and like grow up. Obviously, it's going to be baby steps, but like if that's what's stopping you, then it's still not the other person's fault. It's not their fault, like, that they're not interacting with you because you're the introvert. Like, it's just, it irritates me a little bit because, again, I know it's hard. I'm obviously not telling people with, like, social anxiety, like, just get over it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is don't complain that other people don't interact with you because you have a problem, because that's not how people work. It's not, people aren't obligated to talk with you because you can't make the first move. And if you really want to talk to people, then there are ways to get better at that kind of thing. There are ways to get over it. I'm someone who's an introvert, but if I want to talk to someone, then I kind of, I muster up the courage to go do it. I mean, obviously I don't have, like, I'm an introvert at most, but it's just, that kind of stuff really irritates me. Like, I could get into the whole thing where it's just like, like mental disorders aren't an excuse, but that's a topic. That's a whole other topic for another day. But yeah, that's just all I want to say is don't complain about people not interacting with you if you're not willing to make the first move. But anyway, sorry. What advice would you give to new digital artists users and people who are just getting a drawing tablet? Well, for one thing, I would say that I'm assuming you've already bought a tablet. But if you haven't bought a tablet, my first thing would say start off with something cheaper, because it won't be high quality, but that way you can actually figure out if digital art is something that you like. So go ahead and my brain just died for a second. Yeah, just I know it won't be the high quality stuff, but if you're looking to start digital art, get something cheap, because that way if you decide it's just not working for you, you didn't waste like a ton of money. I'd also say with like art programs, there are good art programs out there that are cheap, so don't spend a bunch of money on Photoshop if you don't even know if you're gonna like use it, so anyway. Hypothetically, could I totally make fan art of your OCs interacting with my OCs? Go for it, that's fine. Excuse me. If you could go to a party with all your fans, would you go? I mean, depends how many people would be there, because I am not someone who loves social situations, especially if that social situation is going to revolve specifically around me and I don't want to be swarmed all night. But yeah, I don't really like parties in general, to be honest, but if there's a lot of people there, I probably wouldn't, just because that's a lot of people to interact with, and I don't like crowds, so. Okay. I'm the wonderful salesman advertising wonderful hours. Oh, thank you, Armini. Metabang, Firepalco, Curtis, Sketchbook, or some free programs to start off with. Yeah, exactly. And I will sell merch eventually. I just have not gotten around to actually like doing it. So I'll sell them that merch eventually. I have cute ideas, so. Have you ever had a red velvet cookie, or what's your favorite cookie type? I have, but I mean, to be honest, I feel like I'm just basic. I like me just some good old chocolate chip, to be honest. I don't need anything too fancy. Do you have an Amazon wish list? I do not at this time, so I don't have I don't really use Amazon, so. I need to probably get water in a minute. Jeez, my voice. My voice is going. Have you ever had a really good oatmeal raisin cookie, though? No, I don't. Oatmeal raisin is just not for me. Any story cliches you can't stand that you could spend your whole entire life without seeing? I mean, not off the top of my head, I just can't think of many cliches right now, other than the whole not like other girls thing, but you know. I also don't like ones where it's like, you know, like girl and boy look across room, it must be true love. But I also don't like that with like two guys look at each other across the room. I don't like it with any couple. I don't like the idea of they look across the room and they're boom, destined to be together. So, you know. Do you play Stardew Valley? I do not. Sorry, I'm looking at some other things too. Hello, Zodiac. I have a question. How do you create characters with disabilities without making the character flop? I'm currently creating and writing characters who's blind, and I'd like some advice. What do you mean by like flop? Like, do you mean flop as in they don't work out, or like what do you mean by flop? That would probably help me be able to give better advice. How do you go about writing a unique and interesting story with a plot twist that has been used a ton? Oh God, I don't know if I have a good advice for that specific scenario. But I would say just make sure that your story is not all centered around the plot twist, because otherwise because here's the thing, if the story's good, even if they see the plot twist coming, it'll still be okay because, you know, it makes sense and there's more to enjoy about the story than just the plot twist. But if the plot twist is obvious and it seems like there's nothing more to the story other than the plot twist, then it'll be boring to people, and to some people it will feel kind of disappointing. You know, so yeah. What is one trope you love to poke fun at? Oh God. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know if there's one specifically. I like poking fun at any kind of stereotype or trope, to be honest. Do you like playing? Do you play Animal Crossing? I used to, kinda, not really as much. Do you know about Overwatch? I do know about it. I don't play it or I don't read on it or whatever. What are some of your favorite old video games? Mario. Um, that's a big one. I have like distinct memories of like watching my dad play it, to be honest. And as weird as it sounds, God, which one is it? I don't know. There was this one spy game that my dad would always play, and my brother and I like loved watching him play it. There's also like, yeah, there's Mario. There's other things. I just can't think of them right now. Less interesting question. What's your favorite color currently? I said this earlier. It's just kind of any color. Just depends on like what it's with and what context and whatever. I mean, how do you create the character without making them believable or interesting? Okay, or not believable and or interesting. Well, that would just be write them like any other person. Like, to be honest, you can write like the thing with like disabilities is obviously there are going to be some things that do have to center around a disability, especially if there's something like blind or deaf. You know, like you can't have them act entirely like a normal person. So but. Honestly, so long as you make their personality not revolve around the fact that they're disabled, you can make them very interesting. Or if you just write them like any other person, really, that happens to have something that limits them, your personality doesn't become dry because you lost an arm or something like that, you can, it's not so hard. I mean, obviously, again, you are going to have to take consideration of things they do, like if they're deaf or blind or in a wheelchair or anything like that. But at the same time, you just got to make sure that's not all that they are, Just give them other personality traits, give them other hobbies, whatever, Should practice, especially, this might be a little personal. It's fine if you don't want to answer it, but how did you come out to the people you love and how did they react? Well, I mean, I just kind of told them. There wasn't really anything big that I did to tell them. And I don't really have a big, fantastic coming out story at all, just because I don't really have a very, like, my family's not hardcore religious. They're not, like, super, they're open to the fact that the world is they're not strict with that kind of stuff. So it's not like they were, I mean, obviously they didn't totally understand it, but like they weren't like going to kick me out or anything. I wasn't scared about how they would really feel about me just because that's the family I have. So I don't really have a very inspirational coming out story, to be honest, because I kind of lucked out with the family that I have. I mean, granted, I haven't really told like my aunts and uncles, but that's just because I don't really have an exceptionally close relationship with them. So, I don't really care what they perceive me as because I hardly talk to them anyway. So, it is what it is. Okay, I'm skipping to the bottom, so if I miss anyone's questions, I'm sorry. Do you respond to DM or do you ignore them because I've thought of DMing you and I don't want to seem like a creep? I do try to respond to DMs unless there's just nothing I can respond with. I mean, I try. I mean, there are some I don't respond to, but that's just for stuff like when people ask me, like, can you review blank character? I don't do that because I've already kind of said and that I don't do character reviews and I have absolutely no recent ones. So I just don't respond because it's just I've gotten exhausted having to say the same thing over and over again. So, but I do generally try to respond to messages. So, I might not be very engaging to talk to, but I don't know. You're free to try. I'm having trouble writing characters that are super diverse without any cliche personality traits. Any advice? Well, okay, here's the thing. If you're like writing a character, like for example, if you're writing a gay character and they just so happen, like if you just feel like it's fitting in their personality to be the flamboyant type of gay character, make them the flamboyant type of gay character. Now you shouldn't make them flamboyant because they're gay, but they can be gay and flamboyant at the same time. I think honestly, that's like the biggest difference between writing a stereotypical character and writing a character that just kind of happens to fit some stereotypes, it's fine to have, because the thing is, there's some truth to every stereotype. There is. They're not right to apply to everyone, and you shouldn't like generalize entire groups based on a stereotype. But like, some gay people are flamboyant, and you know, things like that. Some lesbians happen to be those really butch lesbians. That's true. So you shouldn't write a character as a stereotype because, like, again, I'll still use the gay thing because I think that's a good example. But like, you shouldn't write a gay character flamboyant because, well, they're gay. But you can write a character who happens to be flamboyant and gay at the same time. So, yeah. You shouldn't, because the thing is, if you try to avoid all cliches, you're gonna have a little bit of a hard time. So write the character how you think the character should be, and if it happens to be a little bit cliche, then it happens to be a little bit cliche. But so long as you got there because you're writing them how it feels like it should work, then you shouldn't be too bad off. Would you ever be open to art trades with fans? When I have more time. Have you ever had creepy interactions with a fan? Ah, shoot. I feel like I have. I probably have, but I probably also have avoided it. I've had some that have been really pushy. God, I don't want to call this person out directly, but I know I have one, and I think that they're a younger person, so I don't want to like get on their case. But they continuously keep trying to get me to read their story that it's not what, like, they constantly mention it every time they say something. Like, hey, I have a story. You should look at my story. I get that they want me to review it or they want me to praise it or something. It's a little bit annoying. But, you know, I get that sometimes. I haven't really had any creepy fans. I might have had one, but that was more of a creepy comment towards one of my characters that I kind of just let slide. But I haven't really had any creepy comments directly to me quite yet. Look, a call from Avatar's Last Airbender, perfect example. Do your stories have any love rivals? Like love triangles where two people are fighting for one character's love? Because I don't think I have that. Just because it's not really my favorite kind of storyline, but... Opinions on evil characters that are from, I don't know, offensive topics in which I will not mention? I mean, like, are you saying an evil character that's supposed to represent a certain, like, political or, like, social standpoint? And they're supposed to be the villain of the story? Because, I mean, if that's the story you want to write, then go for it. I don't know. I like stories that are personally a little bit more gray. I mean, it's, like, the same reason why I don't like, most stories with really heavy-handed, like, religious or, like, Christian tones or whatever, where it's like God saves the world and atheism makes you miserable or whatever. I like stories that are a little bit more gray and all that stuff. But I mean, if that's what you want to write, then write it, I guess. I don't know. I can't entirely tell what we're getting at, but... Is there any topics that in stories you really enjoy, or any tropes in stories you enjoy? What are they? It was asked before. It's just I don't really. There's not many on the top of my head that I can think of. So, oh dear. Listen, there's a stereotype that Spanish people are loud, and guess what we are? I mean, there was a character that I made her Hispanic just because, like, I designed her before I decided that. It was just that she could pass for being Hispanic. So I was like, you know, it's a fantasy world, why not? But I made her Hispanic just because I think it makes a lot of the things she does funnier a little bit, you know? Like, not in an offensive way, but that, like, there's just something amusing about her being Hispanic and also doing what she does. But anyway, so, yeah, it's just... there's a little bit of truth to every stereotype. You just shouldn't generalize. Anyway. Do you have a favorite character that you've made? Of all time, probably not. If you gave me like a specific story, I could probably tell you. But out of all of my characters, I would have a few. Um, I'm sorry for asking again, but how do you avoid force shipping in a role play? This happens to me, my friends sometimes. Like, if you're talking about like someone trying to force a ship onto you, like trying to force your characters to be together, you're gonna have to just tell that person like, hey, I don't think it's gonna work. Like, if they keep doing it or they're not getting like any hints or something like that. And if you're talking about like you in a role play and it seems like there's a ship happening that shouldn't happen, then just don't do it, I guess. I'm assuming you mean the former. I'm not entirely sure. And what's your opinion on cringy SCs? I made a whole video about that, so you're free to go watch that. What's your what is your favorite villain of mine? Shoot. I have a lot of my own villains that I like for many different reasons. I love Solar, for example, because he's the one villain I have that is like completely irredeemable, and I love that about him because he's just evil, and that's all that he gets. Nothing redeemable. There's a villain I can't name, but I like him, whatever. I like them because they're not supposed to seem like the villain. In fact, for a majority of that story arc, you're supposed to think they are the hero and that they're the good guy, and then it turns out they're not. And I can't explain why I like that so much, but it's because it's a certain like statement I wanted to make. It's all symbolic and whatever, without like kind of subtly making a point about something. I sadly can't say it though, because I want to make sure that someday whenever it's an actual thing, I want to make sure that people don't already know, and that people totally side with them. I also like, let's see. It's hard to pick from Seven Sins of a Baby because technically there's so many characters in there that are both villains and not villains at the same time, because like just sometimes it's just who are the sins fighting against that day. That's who the antagonists are, and which can be anybody and then suddenly not anybody, so and then themselves. Really, like, to be honest, there's probably only one real villain in Seven Sins and a Baby that's like irredeemable and everything. So what is your opinion on OCX canon? I don't care if someone just wants to have fun, so long as they're not like harassing people over it. Sorry, I blanked there for a second. Okay, I'm gonna scroll down a little bit, so if I miss anything, I apologize. If you could have any kind of animal as a pet, mystical included, what animal would you want? I'd want all of them. If I was in the living situation where I could have all of them, I would have all of them. So, you know. Do you consider draw the squads as using bases or as like following a trend or something? I mean, I don't see what the problem is doing the draw the squad. That's what they're made for. So, you know, they're bases, they're whatever. I don't like, they're fun. That's why people do them. What is your thought on people who try to control your characters in a roleplay, and do you have any stories you can share? I haven't had any people who do it that I'm not okay with it necessarily. I don't think you should. I do not think you should do it, especially with like someone you don't really know very well and you don't know their characters very well, because that's just kind of wrong. I do think there's a big difference between saying like your character noticed something as so you can advance the story and advance whatever plot you're trying to advance. But there's a big difference between that and your character suddenly fell in love with mine for no other reason other than my character. I want our characters to be shipped together, whatever. Because there's a big difference between that. But I mean, I have had Mitchie and I in our roleplay or whatever. Sometimes for the sake of plot lines, we'll, especially her, I'll let her like take control of my characters. But the reason why I don't mind her doing it is because at this point, they're either both our characters or we know each other's characters well enough to where we can do that. So, you know, it's not, in those instances, it's not a big deal. We actually have two characters that we just, both of us technically control them because they're little chaos monsters anyway. So it's like, it's kind of funny. So, you know, Yeah, I don't think it's cool whenever you do it with someone where it's like, you don't know their character, you don't know how they'd react to something. Don't force it on someone else, you know? Oh, I have a random question. If you could choose one random person from a fictional story to slap in the face, who would you slap and why? I mean, if you talk about my fictional stories, it'd be Silver because he's trying to destroy the universe. But if you're talking about any fictional story, then there would be a long list. So, what's your opinion on horror? I find horror fascinating as a genre. I don't like seeing like horror movies or TV shows or whatever, but I like actually reading like horror stories or like analyzing horror as a genre. Like Petscop is like something that I find absolutely fascinating, and I like watching analysis videos on like what are they called? You know, the interactive like spooky internet story kind of thing. But you know, I like horror as a genre. I find that kind of stuff fascinating. I just don't really like horror movies. How's your day been? Pretty good, thanks. Who's your favorite character from Looniverse? You've probably answered this question a billion times. That'd be Vanessa. I can't explain why, but she is by far, like, I'd say she has the most interesting story out of all the characters in Looniverse, in my own personal opinion, or at least she's the most fun for me to write as well. And again, I can't explain why, because I'm not just talking about her backstory, I'm talking about her story in Looniverse, and I can't explain why, but she's definitely my favorite. Ever had that one OC that's just an asshole to everyone because they feel like it? Yeah, plenty of time. I mean, hell, I have a character named Anthony who, when he fights people, he intentionally fights them so that he can piss them off and make them look stupid. That's how he fights them, and it's like my favorite thing to write. It's great, and it'll be hilarious because he's gonna have eventually, when we get to it, he's gonna have like a fight scene with Wrath, and it's gonna be absolutely hilarious. At least for me. Let's say you land on a snow island. You can only bring one of these things. I'll say the answer after you pick. I mean, I don't... If this is an interactive story, I don't want to go too far into that just because it's... I don't want to make that the whole stream, but... I don't know. People in the chat do that. Do you have a favorite book / series? Favorite book? I do have a favorite book. I have a few favorite books because when I find a good book that I like, I really like it. But This Body Isn't Big Enough for Both of Us, that's definitely my favorite book currently because I love that book so much. It's like everything I've ever wanted in a book. And I hope that guy writes a sequel. I also really like The Forest of Hands and Teeth. I haven't read the sequels yet. I need to, but I haven't yet. But I like that first book at least. So yeah. How'd you come up with designs for the Sims and their powers? Their designs are very much... like, those designs are basically their first designs, except Lust got tweaked a little bit. Other than that, and then, like, Greed's hair, obviously. But, their designs were kind of based on jack shit. Like, I just designed what I felt like I could imagine them looking like. For their powers, it just came off of, like, what I would imagine. I was trying to be a little bit clever with some things and not try to rip off everything I already knew. And I tried to make them a little bit symbolic. There's, let's see, like Lust, for example, his power is illusion because I believe that Lust can be kind of like, it's deceptive, you know? When it blinds you and it can deceive you and it can make you see things like, you know, that aren't there, see things differently, whatever. You know, so I like that idea of him being able to like trick people, make them see things and whatever, you know. Then I was about to go into Sloth's powers, but I can't go into Sloth's powers because that's a spoiler. Just a little bit. I mean, it'll happen eventually, but it'll happen early on in the story, but where they're revealed. But let's see. You know, and then some other more obvious. And I can't go too much into how, like, their powers work because it's also a bit of a spoiler, especially because Greed would have to be my example, and that's a huge spoiler. But anyway, I'm gonna stop talking before I like accidentally reveal something. So Um, do you cook much or bake? What's your favorite? I hate cooking, to be honest. I don't like cooking. I'm not a cook at all. And what's even worse is I'm a picky eater. So it's like I'm not I hate cooking. I don't like it. It's just not fun for me. Like some people have a lot of fun with cooking. I do not. uh So you said in your Mary Sue video that everyone who's made a character has made a Mary Sue. Would you be willing to tell us about any of yours that you consider Mary Sue? Yes. My Mary Sue was Star. It was this character I had named Star, who was at the time self-insertion of myself. I would insert her in a different whatever. She was always unrealistic compared to the world she was in. Her powers were always made up on a whim. They had no like logical sense. Her personality was like non-existent. She did have like the story did affect her a little bit, which I think is the biggest key with Mary Sue's is like, does the story affect them? Which the story would affect her, but like just not enough, and she'd always still be kind of the hero and the center of attention, even though she really didn't need to be. She's changed now. She's actually split off into becoming two different characters, actually. But yeah, definitely. That is my Mary Sue. That is who that is. Sorry, I'm skipping the bottom, so if I miss anyone, I'm sorry. How are you going to survive when you live by yourself and you don't cook and you're a picky eater? Good question. Lots of takeout, I guess. But I can make certain stuff. Like I'll cook. It's just unfortunately the stuff I like to cook is like ramen and like instant mac and cheese stuff. So not the healthiest choices in the world, but yeah. So I'll find a way, trust me. And plus I'm as much as I don't like cooking, if that's what I have to do in order to like survive, and I can make sandwiches and whatever, so. Opinion on anti-Sues? Well, the thing is where it's like they talk about where it's like with anti-Sues is that everyone hates them and whatever. And just to me, I more see it as like it's just a boring character. I don't know. To me, I think the whole thing with labeling like Mary Sue, anti-Sue thing is kind of it's too general, and there are definitions that are super flimsy and depend on whoever's using it on like what they mean. So to me, I don't find something like just calling something a Mary Sue or an anti-Sue like any kind of valid criticism unless you can like back it up and you're just using the term to generalize what you've already said. Because like you should evaluate a character based on the character and the context of its story, not the character based on like, does it fit my definition of a Mary Sue? Because if you do that, you're going to be skewed, you're going to be biased and whatever. So it's just I find those terms to be a little bit destructive when you're trying to actually critique something and actually review something. I'm getting This Body Isn't Big Enough for Both of Us for Christmas. Yay! I want everyone to read that book, and I need to do fan art. I keep saying I'm gonna do fan art, and I keep not. Even though even the author himself like made basically like a little reference for the main characters, I should say. But geez, anyway. Do you ever animate? I haven't found any animation on your channel, but I've watched everything, so I don't know. I do animate. There is one animation on my channel. It's kind of old, and it's not really great, so I don't really advertise it. But I do animate, and I'm working on like an animatic / animation because it's not entirely, because it is kind of animated. But it won't be out for a long time, to be honest, so... In my opinion, the everyone hates them trope can definitely play into a story and affect the character. Yeah, definitely. It just depends how you're... actually, I have a good example of this. Well, I say good. It's anecdotal, but like Mitchie and I have something going on where we have a scenario where we have our two boys, and they're like... It's not that everyone hates them, but there's like a specific little group that despises them because of things they technically can control, but they can't control, and it's so complicated, and I love stuff like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the story about someone who's like completely viewed as the bad guy because of whatever reason, but they're not, and it's deeper than that. You can be worked well so long as you write it to be interesting. It's all about execution. It's not about the basis of something, it's about how it is executed. Who hates game? I'm a fight. It's not their fault. They have a reason to, but it's just sad. It's all complicated. And it makes Bella feel bad because it makes it feel like it's her fault, but I'm not gonna get into that. That's on YouTube, Rewind 2018. I literally don't care. Like, I don't watch it. I didn't have any expectations. I just don't care. How do you properly write insanity? Have you ever done it yourself? I've never done it myself, so that would be something you'd probably want to look up and find someone else do it. But again, I'd say just read. Like, if you want to know how to write an insane character, find other characters that are insane and read about them. Find real life people who are insane and read about them. Stuff like that. When the story dynamic is interesting and realistic. Soul Eater on Netflix. Soul Eater does have a actually good example for, like, I wouldn't say maybe insanity, but very close to that. Well, I mean, maybe it is insanity because it's a little bit more masked insanity, which is actually interesting. But yeah, so it does have some good examples. There's also there's a play called The Insanity of Mary Gerard. That has a very good thing where it's all about, like, whether or not this lady actually is insane, but by the end, whether she was or wasn't, she becomes insane by the end of it. She's driven insane. So that's a pretty good one. Which story is Gaben? In my friend and I's role play, we call Crackland or whatever, so. I have this story where all the holiday characters like Santa and the Tooth Fairy all died, so they choose a bunch of random kids to replace them. It's just, that's actually a cute idea. I kind of like that. That'd be a cute idea. That I hope you go places with that. That sounds like a cute idea. Are you into any musicals? I swear to God, I get asked this every stream. Yes, I like musicals. I like plays. I'm a theater person. I'm obligated to, but I'm not into any musical fandom. So, yeah, and please don't start singing in the chat because it's really annoying. But yeah, so there's a lot of musicals and stuff that I like, but I'm just not in any musical fandoms. How do you come up with names for characters? I mean, it depends on the character. Sometimes I try to do something clever or, like, it means something deeper or whatever. And then sometimes it's just something pulled out of my arse. But, like, a good strategy if you're, like, struggling with names, I feel like you need a name for a character that's in, like, a more modern world-ish setting. My recommendation would be, like, look up names and the meaning of names, and you can find something cute, or just go look up a list of names and pick something. There's all sorts of name generators and whatever out there, so. I might have asked this before, but do you watch Studio Ghibli? I do not really, to be honest. The antagonist is a path protector of All Hallows Eve. I think I'm probably going to end this stream somewhat soon. Like, not right this second, but I'm probably going to end it. How long has it been going? Yeah, I'll probably end it soon-ish, but not right now, but I'm probably going to end it kind of soon just because my voice is, like, getting dried out. But, are you ever afraid of someone stealing your stories? Okay, Here's the thing, because there's a difference between, for one thing, to actually steal my stories and not just the idea of my stories, that would imply that they have to know everything about my stories, and I'm not that stupid. Um, the only people who know intimate details about my stories are like trusted people. But yeah, but there is also a difference between, there is a very, 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 very big difference between like some random user, like teenager on the internet trying to steal and copy your story or whatever because of whatever reason, and an actual company trying to do that. And the thing with like if normal like regular people do that, that's really easy to combat because everyone can see, it's pretty obvious, and it's really easy for that person not to get famous over something like that. If it's a company, it's a little bit more tricky, but then again, just like word of advice to anyone, if you don't want your story to be stolen, do not put every little detail about your story out on the internet, and you'll be good. But yeah, if you don't want your story stolen beat for beat. But yeah. What do you do when you have a character but only imagines to draw them in the gorilla style? I don't know. I've not experienced that, so. Do you think a character can have an edgy personality and act like a badass, emotionalist, always wears black type of person without being a terrible character? I think they can, so long as like, I mean, hell, like so many people like Shadow the Hedgehog and all that stuff, you know. So that can work. It just depends on the context and whatever. And I think part of it is also has to be this certain level of self awareness that of the story writer. You know, about like what kind of character they're writing, because like the moment you kind of lose that self-awareness is the moment that you can kind of go downhill. Or if you try to treat the character like you should like the character because of that, because that's when you're going to lose people. You can definitely write a good character that is emotionless, always wears the edgy, you know, whatever. But you know, you can, it's just, you got to make sure you work on it, and just got to make sure that, and preferably just don't make that their entire personality, or they'll just be a very flat character, which isn't a bad character. It just means that they wouldn't be like an interesting protagonist. But yeah. How do you avoid making a character that looks too much like someone else's? Not looking too much like your specialist that be original. Ha! Ha! Your character's probably always going to look like someone else's, and that's the reality of it. I will say, if you're worried about making it look too much like your inspirations, simply like just don't look at your inspirations for your references, you know? And it's not bad if your character resembles your inspirations, because that's natural. Just don't copy a character beat for beat. Like there was someone in the past, I was going to make a video about them, but I decided not to, because they didn't mean any ill intent. They weren't trying to steal anything from me, but they made a character that was like beat for beat Infinity, just with masculine pronouns and some slightly different like tweaks. But for otherwise, it was beat for beat what I made. So it's like, again, but you can't, if you stress too much about originality, you are never going to get anywhere. You are not. Because, like, I mean, Twisted Disaster and I are a great example. We have so many similarities in our, like, some of our stories. It's hilarious. And we've never met each other. And she's been working on her stories way longer than I've been working on mine. But we have those, and it's just because that's how it is. We are living in a day and age where I can guarantee you almost everyone has thought of almost everything. So do not overstress about being 100% original, because you won't go anywhere. So, you know, it's whatever. And if you just worry about being too much like your inspirations, then just don't be like your inspirations. Just don't copy your inspirations beat for beat. It's actually a lot easier than it sounds. And you might think something's really similar to something else, but if you really sit down and look at it, like, it probably isn't. I can guarantee you. And there's nothing wrong with being inspired by somebody. And so long as they're not an asshole, they're going to see that too. And they're not going to be mad about it, about you being inspired. What are your thoughts on shipping characters together within a roleplay? Hi, I'm with Mitchie. We have like a billion crack kids and crack pairings. How you doing? So I hope that's clear enough on my answer. Do you like stories that go dark and edgy at some point in the story? Yeah, so long as it just doesn't feel like too boring, I guess. You know, I like stories that are dark, to be honest. Like, I actually really like darker stories, and darker themes and stories, because I feel like some people are a little bit scared to go that far into it. But you know, I do like darker stories, to be honest, and I also find it fascinating when a story can start out bright and happy and get super fucking dark, you know? Do you plan on making an Etsy store or an online store in the future? Hopefully. Someday. How long is too long to make a story? When does it feel like it should have ended way earlier? Well, that depends on the story. If you have content to keep your story going, I mean, depending on the format, you know, keep going. It's not all stories need a definitive ending. It's not bad, and obviously you're not going to have a good ending if you don't come up with a solid ending. But not all stories necessarily need one. And if you feel like you have enough content to keep going, then keep going. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. At least if you're doing something like a comic, or if you're writing a book series or something like that. You know, but like, you know, it's just, anyway, that's just kind of up to you, and that's kind of up to what story you're writing. Do you draw any realism at all? I like drawing realistic portraits of people. I mean, not really, just because I don't like doing it. It just feels too restrictive sometimes for me. I'd love to be able to sit down and draw like realistic portraits of all of my characters, for the fun of it. But like, it becomes a lot less fun for me when I'm drawing, when I have to like be strictly realistic. Like, I don't like sitting around like drawing plants. It's just not really my thing. But you know, it is what it is. I don't really like drawing realism that much. How do you make a good villain? Well, it depends what kind of villain you're looking for. All right, my throat is like totally dried at this point, so I will see you guys. I think I'm gonna end it here, but thank y'all for coming and hanging out with me, and I appreciate it, and I love you all, and I will see you in the next video, stream, whatever I happen to do, whatever. So see you guys, bye.